Welcome to Blogs and Articles. In this series, we look at blog posts, articles online, and news stories about love, marriage, dating, and relationships. I'll provide some coaching questions for exploration, as I would for a client who is in this situation. Then finally, I'll provide my commentary at the end of just me being myself, unfiltered and unadulterated. Hi, I'm Janelle, the relationship coach behind The Successful Invisible. I help professional Black women who are 35 plus date and partner with more self awareness and intentionality. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day self awareness and dating challenge. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Dominance benefits men and prestige benefits women in social influence, but time equalizes these effects, studies find. I wanted to do something a little different today with my blogs and articles post and make it a more general how society views men and women. So let's jump into it. A study in Journal of Personality and Social Psychology examined how dominance and prestige influence social standing across men and women over time. The dominance prestige framework, widely studied in social and evolutionary psychology, identifies dominance, assertiveness and control, and prestige, competence and cooperation, as two distinct paths to achieving influence and status. However, this framework has largely overlooked the role of gender stereotypes and how they may shape the effectiveness of these strategies. Gender norms often dictate that dominance aligns with stereotypically masculine traits, while prestige aligns with communal traits, which are considered more feminine. As a result, individuals who defy these expectations often face backlash, raising questions about the universal applicability of these strategies. Hemant Kakar investigated whether the effectiveness of dominance and prestige as strategies for gaining social influence depends on an individual's gender and whether these dynamics shift over time. 3 pilot studies provided context for interpreting the results of the main study. Pilot study 1, 100% participants confirmed that Twitter was an appropriate stereotype neutral platform for examining gendered influence. Pilot Study 2, 397 participants, established that dominance and prestige aligned with masculine and feminine traits, respectively. Pilot Study 3, 389 participants, clarified that dominance was linked to behaviors likely to elicit backlash for women, whereas prestige involved traits more socially acceptable for both genders. Building on these findings, the main study involved a sample of 188 participants, 99 men and 89 women, who provided self-reports on their tendencies toward dominance and prestige using a 17-item scale. Participants also shared their public Twitter handles, allowing the researchers to analyze their online social networks and behavior. The study included a total of 229,884 tweets, scrapping up to 3,200 tweets per participant, which included their entire Twitter history for 61.7% of the sample. Only original tweets authored by participants were included, while retweets and celebrity content were excluded to focus on participants' direct influence within their networks. Kakar operationalized social influence by measuring the number of times a participant's tweets were retweeted. Network centrality, or how often participants were directly mentioned, tagged, or replied to by their followers, was calculated as a proxy for likability and social standing within the network. Additional factors such as emotional tone of tweets, reciprocity in retweeting, and temporal trends in retweet activity were controlled to isolate the effects of dominance and prestige. Kakar found that dominance and prestige interact with gender to influence social standing on Twitter. Men benefited from dominance, with higher dominance associated with more retweets and network centrality, as it aligned with masculine stereotypes of assertiveness. In contrast, women experienced reduced social influence when using dominance, as it violated communal gender norms, leading to lower retweets and network centrality. Prestige, however, was more effective for women, boosting their influence by aligning with societal expectations of competence and cooperation. For men, prestige had a weaker effect on social influence as its communal aspects clashed with traditional masculine stereotypes. Over time, the effectiveness of dominance declined for both men and women, and its coercive nature led to diminished likability and influence. Prestige, on the other hand, became more viable for both genders over time, as its attributes of competence and collaboration resonated with network members who grew more familiar with the individuals. These findings demonstrate that gender stereotypes and time dynamically shape the viability of dominance and prestige as strategies for achieving social influence. One limitation was the reliance on Twitter as a study context, which may not generalize to offline interactions. The study, Achieving Social Influence Across Gender and Time, Are Dominance and Prestige Equally Viable for Men and Women, was authored by Hemnet Kakar. All right, now let's jump into some coaching questions that I often ask or would ask in a session with a client who was going through anything similar to the article that I just read. So grab a fresh pen and a notebook and answer these coaching questions truthfully and fully in order to kind of go deeper on your own journey to greater self awareness when it comes to dating and relationships. And as you know, first relationship, of course, that we need to get healthy around is a relationship with ourselves. So let's jump into these questions for reflection. Question 1. What personal qualities or traits contribute most to building long-term influence in professional and social circles? Now, I know many of you who listen to my content are professional women, especially professional Black women, and there has been a building out of your social and professional circle. And this is a great question to really reflect on the things you've done to build out those circles. When you go somewhere, how do you drive influence? When you're in a room at a gala or an event, how do you command attention? So all of those responses will go very nicely with addressing this question. Question 2. How do societal expectations and gender norms impact the effectiveness of different leadership and communication styles? I think this is very interesting because I was working with a client last week and they were telling me about their direct manager, who is, I guess you would say, a boomer man, and then their big boss, who is maybe a Gen Xer or even maybe a late boomer woman, and some of the dynamics that go on in what she has observed in their relationship, and how her direct manager always seems very resistant to their big boss's leadership, even though he was very aware of who his boss was going to be because she was part of his interview process. He seems to just have this resistance, and his communication style is very weak, according to her, where her big boss's communication style is very strong, clear, empathetic, and intuitive. So I think this is a very relevant question that each one of us needs to assess about ourselves and how our communication styles and our leadership styles and etc. impact our professional and personal lives. Question 3. In what ways can assertiveness and collaboration be balanced to maintain both credibility and likability over time? I want you to think about this question from a personal aspect, like a romantic relationship aspect, as well as if you have any type of leadership role, even if you don't have direct reports, in your professional life. The answers may surprise you because there may be some overlap, but there also may be characteristics that are very different that you identify, or ways that you identify that are completely different for those two areas of your life. Question number 4. How might adapting an influence strategy based on strengths rather than gendered expectations create better outcomes in leadership or career growth? Ooh, I love this one. Many women that I have worked with, and myself included, when we're in a professional environment, we lean more into an assertiveness and a tactical strategy for leadership. This isn't all women. That doesn't mean we don't have charm, empathy, etc. That just happens to not be the most automatic or comfortable area to lean into when it comes to leading. Now, when you're younger in your career or new in your career, it can be uncomfortable to be outside of a space that has been specifically gendered for you. But as you grow more confident and comfortable in your ability to lead, listen, and deliver on whatever you're doing, you probably are more comfortable leaning into those characteristics. So definitely reflect on this, on how might adapting an influence strategy based on strengths, based upon what you're comfortable with, based upon what comes natural to you, really help create better outcomes for you. If being charming and having influence and prestige is your comfort zone, there's nothing wrong with that. But how can you do that more skillfully, tactfully, and objectively to have the accomplishments in your career that you desire? Question 5. What mindset shifts or behavioral adjustments could help foster sustainable and authentic social influence in a chosen field? I would say this may be a harder question to answer without great self awareness or having someone help you do some self reflection exercises, i.e., a therapist, a counselor, a coach. Those are all different. Please research and find what's the best fit for you, to really make this assessment and identify areas where some shifts would be beneficial for you. Now, any change takes effort. Anything that's against how you normally like to do things or whatever takes effort. So, go through this exercise or answer this question on your own, but also think about what other resources you may be able to tap into. Like I said, a therapist, a counselor, or a coach that would help you really reflect and come up with some great ideas, or clearer targets, I should say, about mindset shifts and behavioral changes that would be beneficial for your long term success. Let's jump into one of my favorite parts of the videos for my blogs and article series. And that's where I just offer you my thoughts on the article or blog post that I just read. All right. So, my thoughts on this article are pretty straightforward. I do agree with a lot of the things that were said, and they make sense because many of us, if you're a woman and you listen to my content, you can identify with this. That when you have leaned into being assertive and even establishing boundaries, many times you get a lot of pushback, but the same person or persons that are giving you pushback would not give that level of pushback or resistance to a man who is asserting his boundaries, asserting himself, or going for something, or showing ambition. That's also a big area where you can see resistance from people when you're a woman, because they want to put that characteristic into a classically masculine thing. And you've seen on social media time and time again, many times modern women, especially black women, and that's nothing but misogynoir, who are ambitious and successful are called masculine. What the people who lean into this rhetoric or speak this rhetoric really don't understand, they're holding up a mirror to themselves to basically say they don't know how to assert themselves in a way that is not harmful to others, that is truly focused on themselves and for themselves. And it's hurting them. And their only way to retaliate, I guess, is to do all the online trolling, be nasty to women, etc. Now, what I liked about this article that I didn't necessarily realize intuitively or through experience is that the dominance effect is very equalizing to the prestige effect as time goes along. I do think Twitter was pretty shitty sample to use, but I understand why they did that. It's one of the most open social media networks where people can just post the wildest shit, and it's also a pretty easy platform to scrape data from. So I understand why the researcher did what he did. But back to my point, the fact that these are equalizing over time really is a golden nugget for women and men who are very self-aware. You need to lean into your prestige, and the way they explained it, competency and cooperation or compliance, I kind of get, but it's more so, I think of it as mastery. When you've mastered self, when you've mastered what you do, when you're very highly respected, as well as leading into that, I'm calling dominance assertiveness and having strong boundaries, you are going to get much further in your personal relationships and in your professional relationships. So, cool article. Let me know your thoughts about it because I'm curious to see what others think about it as well. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of Blogs and Articles, The Influence Game: Why Men Win with Dominance and Women Thrive with Prestige. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day awareness in dating challenge. Also, check out my podcast, The Successful Invisible, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, this is your coach, Jay Nell. Stay empowered and see you on the next article or blog post.